Hey, Chandler Bolt here. Welcome back. In this video, I want to talk to you about the traditional book launch. So if you've ever seen a big name author launch a big book, they have followed this method. So I've studied hundreds of the most successful authors and hundreds of the most successful book launches. And it turns out that there's a formula that they follow to launch books successfully. I've distilled that formula into what I call the traditional book launch. So in this video, I'm going to talk to you about who should follow the traditional book launch, what are the core frameworks and things that you need to do for it, and the steps that you need to take to implement this successfully. There's a formula that all of the most successful authors follow to publish books. I've studied hundreds of the most successful authors and hundreds of the most successful books, in addition to launching thousands of books through my company, selfpublishing.com. And we've distilled down what works for the most successful books. And there's this common list, there's this common trait, there's this common playbook that all of these authors have in common and that all of these launches have in common. And it's what I call the traditional book launch formula. So in this video, I'm going to walk you through that formula. I'm going to walk you through why it works, who it's for, and how to use it to sell a whole lot of copies of your book and how to use it to grow your business like crazy through a book launch. So first off, who's this book launch for and who should follow it? So there's a few buckets of people. Number one, you're an author with a sizable audience. So if you've got a big audience, a big email list, maybe you've had a following for a while, this is a really good launch strategy for you. It's also for authors who are publishing books with a major publisher. Your publisher is probably recommending some format or some formula like this. It's also for people who are public speakers, who are consultants, who are business owners. It's especially for people who have got experience on TV or with podcasts, with newspapers. And then lastly, this is for authors who have a whole lot of time, money, and energy to invest into the success of this book launch. So if you're looking to go all in, if you're looking to push all of your chips into the table, then the traditional book launch is for you. Now let's get into the core pillars of the traditional book launch formula. Now first, we're going to layer this formula on top of what I call the MVP launch. You may remember this. So I've talked about this. It's the MVP launch. It's the minimum viable product launch. Right? So I've got a whole video on that. So watch that other video on the MVP launch. I break down the full formula, but the kind of the TLDR is there's three core pillars of the launch triangle. So there's the launch team. That's number one. If you just do one thing, do that, create a launch team. Then there's the second pillar of that launch triangle, which is getting reviews. So getting as many reviews as possible out of the gates. And then thirdly, there's promotions. Okay. So this is doing one-off promos. Yes. But then more importantly, evergreen promotional efforts that are going to keep selling books day after day, week after week, month after month, year after year. Now the promotions, this is kind of like the accordion, where the promotions is the big differentiator between the MVP launch and the traditional book launch formula, is you're going to spend a whole lot more time, money, and energy on promotions. Now, the key here is preparation ahead of time. You're going to spend 90% of your time preparing for the launch and 10% or less of your time during the actual launch week. So on the MVP launch, you can go from book done to launched in the span of maybe 2 to 3 months. For a more traditional book launch, it's probably going to be 6 months, 9 months, maybe even 12 months out that you're preparing for the launch of the book. Now, ahead of the launch, you're going to focus on two things. Number one, you're going to focus on maximizing pre-sales. This is really, really important. These are all the books that are sold prior to launch. Now, what a lot of people will do is they'll launch pre-sale bonuses, pre-sale campaigns, there's giveaways, there's bonus courses, there are all that stuff where you can create a whole campaign, which is if you buy the book ahead of launch, I will give you these bonuses, right? So you've probably seen this because they're following this formula. So the reason this is important is you've got to give people a reason why they should buy the book ahead of time. Think about your own behaviors, right? If someone's asking you to buy a book ahead of the launch date, why would I do that? There's no incentive for me to do that. What am I going to just buy the book and then wait for months to get that book? I don't want to do that. No one likes to wait. Amazon has trained us not to wait. Everything comes in 2 days or less. You got to give them a compelling reason why they should buy the book ahead of time. That comes in the form of pre-sale promotions, pre-sale bonuses, and campaigns. So that's the first thing, maximizing pre-sales by any means possible. Bonuses, pre-sale campaigns, getting as many copies sold as possible before the launch week actually happens. Then number two, you want to line up as many promotions as possible for your launch week. So I'm going to get into that a little bit later in this video, but you want to line up all the stuff ahead of time so that during that launch week, you want to be everywhere. So if someone's never heard of you, now all of a sudden they're seeing you TV, newspaper, podcasts. Oh my gosh, I can't go anywhere on social media or on podcasts without seeing you or without seeing a copy of your book. So those are the two buckets of things that you want to focus on ahead of the launch. Now let's go deeper into that second bucket, which is your promotions. Remember we said, hey, this is kind of the accordion. This is the thing that you're going to spend a lot of time on. There's 7 core types of promotions that we've found predictably sell a ton of books. So I'm going to walk you through those 7 promotion types. I'm going to give you an overview, and then it's up to you to focus on the 1 or 2 that you think are going to really move the needle and fit your skill sets and your strengths. Number 1, podcast interviews and media appearances. Now, this is one of the most successful things that I found and that our authors have found to sell a ton of copies. Not only during launch week, you can do these ahead of time, but then also it's one of the best ways to sell books long term. I remember doing a podcast interview and having a conversation with Hal Elrod, good friend of mine here in Austin, Texas. He's written and published a book called The Miracle Morning, and that is a perennial seller. It's self-published. It did not sell well out of the gates. Hal said that he did 300 podcast interviews in the first year. If you can believe that, that is absolutely insane. I'm not saying you got to do 300 podcast interviews, but he just kept doing them, and he still does them to this day. And what he said happened is a few months after the launch, he started selling more books and then more books and then more books. And it just started to stack because these are evergreen assets that continue to sell books. That's the first and most important part. But they're also on a medium where people actually consume books. So the old days of getting traditional media are largely dead. Now I'll talk about that in just a second. It's helpful, but it's mostly vanity metrics because who reads books? Not people who are watching the Today Show or Good Morning America every morning. Not typically, right? Then more often, it's the people who are listening to podcasts. Those are people who are growth oriented. They're listening to that podcast. They're looking to learn and grow. When they see you on that podcast, they say, let me get this book. And it's a lot easier for them to do so, right? Because if you think passive participation when I'm on the couch watching TV, active participation when I have my phone listening to a podcast, and then I can just click the link and purchase the book. So the first thing that we recommend is a podcast and media appearance tour. Now you can focus on one or the other or both. If you do media, focus on local media, maybe TV, newspaper. That's not really going to move a ton of books, but it will build social proof around your book. So I've got a whole separate video. You can check that out on how to get what we call author appearances. This is podcast interviews, speaking gigs, media appearances, etc. So it goes in depth on this, but that's number 1. Number 2, bulk purchases. This is a really great way to sell books ahead of your launch. It's a really great way. It's kind of like a B2B sale, right? Where you're selling business to business, so one person to another person, and it's a group sale. So Dave Ramsey has made this model super popular. This is a big part of why his company's done so well. This is a big part of why his Financial Peace University and all this stuff has done so well, because they sell into organizations, schools, and churches. And so if you think about that, well, they're making one sale, yes, but that one sale is to 200 people. It's to 100 people. It's to 500 people. So any way that you can bulk sell books ahead of the launch, really helpful. Now you might do this for companies. You might say, hey, I'm going to sell into companies that I know of, and this is going to be really helpful for them to train their workforce. You might say, I do speaking gigs. I'm going to bulk sell to do speaking gigs, different audiences. So you're finding ways to package and sell in bulk. This can lead to hundreds, if not thousands of copies sold ahead of your launch. Number 3, influencer campaigns. So this is one thing that I did with my book published when I relaunched it, is you want to find what some people will call your dream 100, or maybe it's even your dream 500. You've got 500 people, maybe 100 people that are influencers that can get your book in front of more people. All right. And so what we want to do here is a couple things. Number 1, I like to start with smaller B and C level influencers because they're more likely to promote your book. Now you want to go to the Tony Robbins of the world. You want to go to the Michelle Obamas of the world. Yeah. But you know how many of these things they probably get? Right? A lot. So I want to start with the micro influencers first. And what I did personally, you can choose to replicate this or not, is I just want to get the book in their hands with a specific ask. And so what I did is I reached out to these 100 or so people. I got their address. I shipped them a copy of the book with a note. Now I did a box as well. That was a box that's kind of had some stuff around the launch. It's fun, but really you don't have to do that. That's a little bit over engineering it. At a minimum, ship them a book with a letter. Super simple. That's going to cost you $7, $10 a piece. And now you've gotten that book in their hands with a letter of, hey, here's 3 things you can do to support. take a picture, post it on social. Do you have a podcast? You can bring me on the podcast. Or thirdly, if you just want to leave a review or send me a blurb, that'd mean the world to me. That's how we're reaching out to influencers, getting in front of important people that then have the exponential potential to get this in front of a bunch of people. Number 4, a launch party. Now, this is not a big book mover, but it is a lot of fun. It builds some social proof. And it's just, some people like to have fun with a launch party. I've hosted a bunch of these launch parties at my house for friends that are authors. We're even starting to host some of these at our office. So a launch party, it's getting people who are closest to you together for a party to celebrate the launch of the book. It could be 50 people. It could be 100 people. Now, bonus points if those people are influencers or they're people who can share about your book, right? Because you're really just trying to create a powerful moment that sparks a lot of social shares, that sparks reviews and all that stuff. And you don't have to overcomplicate this. I've seen some people, they just spend weeks or months planning a launch party at the neglect of all the other marketing stuff. And the launch party doesn't move books. And now they've done nothing else to market their book. So this certainly isn't like a key pillar strategy that I'll plant my flag on, but it is a nice addition to move books. So you keep it simple. You gather people together. You maybe talk for 5 to 10 minutes on the book itself. What I like to do is have everyone write out a review while they're at the party and then promise to leave it the next day or whatever. I don't want to bore you with the technical stuff. If you have everyone post their review live in one space, it'll just get pulled down from Amazon. So you shouldn't do that. But I have them write it out and then say, hey, I'm just going to follow up with you tomorrow. And I'd love for you to leave this review on the book. So it's a great way to just get a bunch of reviews, get some buzz about the book. Maybe you got a place where you can take pictures. That's getting posted on social. It's a simple, effective way to build buzz, excitement, and more importantly, just to celebrate all the hard work around this book launch. If you're looking to learn more about launch parties, how to run them, how to host them, all that stuff, check out the interview that I did with a guy named Nick Gray. So he wrote a great book. It's called The 2-Hour Cocktail Party, and he runs these all the time. And he actually hosted a launch party for my friend Noah Kagan. He's a guy who runs AppSumo. You may have heard of his book. It's called The $1 Million Weekend. We hosted the launch party for Noah at my house. Nick ran it. It was awesome. It was super fun. And we break down kind of the process of how you can run a launch party. So if you want to learn more, check out that video. Number 5, a virtual book tour. So you may have heard of the traditional book tours. Traditional book tours are dead, where you travel around from city to city doing a book tour and signing books and all that stuff. Maybe it's at a library, maybe it's at a Barnes & Noble or something like that. You can still do it. It's just not a big needle mover. For most people, it's a waste of time. So what we recommend instead is doing a virtual book tour. All right. So this integrates with the first piece that I talked about, the podcast interviews and all that stuff. So do a virtual book tour means getting in front of virtual audiences that can buy your book. So maybe you're doing webinars. Maybe you're doing podcast interview. Maybe you're doing social media tours. You're going around to influencers saying, hey, let's go live. And I want to do a virtual book presentation or virtual book tour for your audience. This is wildly effective for a few reasons. Number one, it's not all the travel and logistics. Traveling around from city to city and getting people to show up in person is really hard. And so what if instead you could just leverage other people's audiences and do a virtual book tour? It's way cheaper, it's easier to coordinate, and it's also more leverage, and it's going to lead to a lot more books sold. Number 6, book signings. So this is kind of like the launch party in the sense that it's fun mostly for vanity metrics, but doesn't move a ton of books. All right. So if you want to do book signings, I recommend doing them locally. And actually the most valuable part of doing the book signing is often the video or the content or just kind of the personal connections for your business that comes from them. But it's not a big time strategy to move books. So similar to how we want to do a virtual book tour instead of in-person book tour, book signings really, they're not the best bang for your buck. So only do them if it's something that's going to be meaningful to you. Maybe if you can line it up locally and if you can do it in a way that's going to help you grow your business. Now, if that's the case, then cool. Integrate it into other business stuff. Like I do this all the time. When I go speak, I do a book signing after the talk. Now that helps move a lot more books. That also helps bring in a ton of customers. So this is more of a strategy I like to integrate into other things that I'm doing in my business instead of a standalone strategy with the intent of selling books. Number 7, speaking gigs. Speaking gigs are one of the best ways to sell a ton of copies of your book. There's 2 ways that you can do this. Number 1, you can go in and speak and get them to bulk buy books. That's the simplest way. So if you're already getting paid to speak, amazing. I mean, just integrate that in and say, hey, I'll lower my fee, but you got to buy 100 books, or you got to buy books for everyone in the audience, right? So now all of a sudden, every time you speak, you're selling a ton of books. But then secondly, if you're not getting paid to speak, well, then that's fine, but sell books at the back of the room, right? So now all the time when you're speaking, and you can do this whether you're getting paid or not, is you can sell books at the back of the room and use those talks to sell a ton of books. And so this is just a really powerful framework that either way is going to help you bulk sell books. And if you've seen the biggest authors out there, the Tony Robbins of the world, the Gary Vaynerchuks, big time influential authors, this is a key strategy that they use. Around their book launch, they combine bulk sales with speaking gigs. And they say, yeah, I'll come in to speak at your conference. Instead of my normal speaking fee of 50 grand, all you have to do is buy $25,000 worth of books. So buy 1,000 copies, right? So now all of a sudden you start doing some math, and that might seem unattainable or unapproachable for you, but you could do it at a smaller scale, right? You say, hey, buy 100 books. Well, you do a few speaking gigs, 100 books a pop, you're going to sell a whole lot more books. And so as someone who runs a conference and who's always looking for speakers to come in for our audience, this is a cheat code on my end too, because I know the best time to get a speaker, a really high level speaker that maybe they don't do paid speaking gigs even, they do them around their book launch. And so I say, hey, I'll come in and buy some books if you come in and speak to my audience. So it's kind of this interesting win-win where I know if they come in and speak to my audience, well, now I've got a bunch of books that I can give to my audience. It's a value add for the audience, and I'm getting them at a discounted speaking fee. So use that to your advantage on the other side of things. As a speaker, integrate book sales into your speaking gigs. So there you have it. Those are the 7 core promotional pillars of the traditional book launch. The most important thing here is that you don't try to do all of them. And in fact, I would encourage that you don't try to do anywhere near all of them. Pick 2 or 3, integrate those 2 or 3. So you want to look at, what are you good at? What are your strengths? What are you already doing? How do I integrate this into what I'm already doing? Those 1 or 2 or maybe 3 at the most, those are the best things that you can do to traditionally launch your book. Now, if you want in-depth breakdowns on all of these things, we've got other videos that you can go through. So check out those videos, but pick 1 or 2 and implement those. And then lastly, and this is really, really important, is you commit to the 1-year launch. Most people treat their launch as a 1-week launch. We think that's a flawed model. You're going to spend all this time and effort, and then what? You're going to focus on it for a week and then drop it like it's hot? No. You're going to focus on what we call the 1-year launch. So that really builds on the stuff that I cover in this video. I've got a video breaking down the 1-year launch. What is it? Why do you need to do it? And I think it's one of the most important things that you can do after you've traditionally launched your book. So now you know the traditional book launch formula. This is how the most successful authors launch their book. If you found this video helpful, I want you to do 2 things right now. Number 1, I want you to comment below, which of these 7 promo types are you going to use with your book launch? Which was most helpful? Which one is going to be most helpful for you to sell more books? And then number 2, I want you to check out our next videos. We've got a whole lot of videos, as I mentioned, breaking down the full marketing process, all the different elements that I talked about. If you want to know more about them, you can check out our playlist. We got a bunch of videos in there, or just check out the videos on this channel. So do those 2 things right now. Comment below. Let me know what was most helpful. I read and respond to every single comment. And then secondly, check out some more videos on the channel, and I'll see you in the next one.